Hey there, and welcome to Unit 3. We're talking about the anatomical view of deafness and versus the cultural view. We've already started talking about the cultural view a little bit. This focuses on the physical parts of being deaf, because if there was no physical deafness, you would not have the deaf community. So it's a real part of the deaf community. It is worth knowing about it so that you don't have to ask deaf people about it because they are tired of telling you that they can't hear. Why can't they hear? Well, here are some reasons. Okay, so first we need to understand what's going on inside the ear. Okay, so you have three main parts to the ear. We have the outer visible ear. So you have the ear lobe, which is also known as the pinna. You have the ear canal, which is the auditory canal. Okay, and then you have the ear drum, or the tympanic membrane. Okay, those are visible, although sometimes you use a little otoscope to look and see how things are. But you can see and feel the ear. You can put your finger inside your ear canal, and if you're stupid, you can put a Q-tip through your eardrum. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, they said never put anything more sharp than your elbow in your ear. And since you can't put your elbow in your ear, you'd be safe, right? Okay. Next, we have the middle ear, which is partly visible through the tympanic membrane with bright lights, but not really very visible. And that is really three bones. You have the hammer, the malleus. You have the anvil, because the hammer has to strike something, right? Anvil, or the incus. That's my sound. And then you have the stirrup, or stapes, which is over here. It's one that looks, it's got two parts to it. This is the mechanical part of the ear. We'll get to that in a minute. And then you have the inner ear over here. And so those bones push on soft part of the inner ear. Now understand, the inner ear, this is not to scale. Right? This is so you can see the parts. Okay. That looks like a snail. That is all about the same size as a pea, a green pea. Right? That's the size. So we got that size here, not to scale. It's a little smaller than that. Okay. The inner ear, mostly we talk about the cochlea, and you've heard about a cochlear implant. That's where that happens. And we have two other big parts to it, which are from the cochlea. You have the auditory nerve, which goes into the brain. Okay. You also have the semicircular, or half circle, canals, and those don't deal with hearing. They deal with balance. Interesting. Okay, so we start off with the outer ear funnels sound waves to the eardrum, which moves. Okay. Okay, this moves, and then inside you have bones attached to it, and they move. So you have, and this goes, and this goes, okay. And so these amplify movement. So a little bit of movement over here becomes a bigger movement over here. And so let's say physical, you have sound waves which is well, parallel to an electronic signal. It's um, it's wavy waves. It's air. Okay, air conduction. Then we go to mechanical conduction. Things are touching and moving. And then we go inside the cochlea, which is filled with fluid. And so we have a water-like wave, so not air conduction, but water or liquid conduction inside the cochlea. Um, I I don't have fantastic pictures of the cochlea. Maybe Google has some. Let's take a look. Um, yeah, we'll take that one. So the idea here is that the cochlea spirals, right? And so you have hair cells inside, and these things flow with the fluid, with the water in the cochlea, right? And so that movement relates to now an electrical signal, and that's what travels on the auditory nerve to the brain is electrical. So we have air, mechanical conduction, um, liquid-based waves to electrical signals. Um, it's amazing that it works at all. Okay, there we go. So the semicircular canals relate to balance. I don't want to get into the details here, but let's say that if you have damage to your ear, you may have a weakened sense of balance. Your sense of balance comes from three sources. Your resistance to gravity. So you feel, you have a muscle resistance to stand up, and then you push down and you get taller, right? And that's resistance to gravity. Your eyes will tell you what's up, and if you go into a fun house, that can be thrown off and you feel dizzy because your eyes are not telling you. Your eyes are telling you where up is, and your body is saying, "Oh no, this is up. That's not up." Uh, and then the internal sense of balance is from the semicircular canals. So some deaf people have a diminished sense of balance. Some conditions related to deafness or deaf blindness may impact your balance. And for a deaf blind person, as their eyesight diminishes, if they already have some impairment for their internal sense of balance, then the only thing they have left is the resistance to gravity to know where is up. And that can be very problematic if they're in, say, water, and if they fall in the water to know where is up. And they have to be patient and start to float, and then they know, aha, if I go this way I can breathe. Otherwise, I'll be stuck and I'm going to die under the water, which we assume has happened to people with other situations. Great, 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 great. So what does this mean? You could have an impairment anywhere in here. You could have more than, you might have no outside ear, but the rest of it is there, and we just need to get a hole in your head so to the right place, and maybe we need to make an eardrum and free up the bones so that they can move. Okay, the bones might be frozen. They might be not literally cold frozen, but they might be stuck, and so they can be replaced with other things that will do the right movement. And maybe all that's fine, but the hair cells in the cochlea, right? They might be diminished, broken, absent, and so they do not convert. Everything's working, but they don't convert anything to the electrical stimulus for the auditory nerve, and so there's nothing going to the brain. So there's many different ways to be deaf. And this is how an audiologist will measure how deaf are you. Okay, and so what you have is decibels going down, right? We have 0 decibels to 120 decibels. Okay. At 100 decibels, your body starts vibrating. So really, there's almost no point in having 110, 120 on there. And so most audiograms are of value up to the 100 level. And that's why people will talk about how much percent hearing they have. This does not measure percent. An audiogram does not tell you anything about percent. But some people will say that they have a 90% hearing loss. Well, that means that they can't hear until sounds cross the 90 decibel level until they can perceive that that's a sound. Okay, so to say that that's 90% hearing loss is a rough guess. People accept that answer because they don't know what an audiogram looks like, what it really measures, but technically it's never right. Okay, so you have different frequencies of sound. You have your low frequencies, which would, well, that's probably around 500 to 1,000, somewhere 750 decibels around here, or not decibels, cycles, frequency. 125 is very low. I think jet airplane has some of that element in it. Jake brakes on a truck. They must still call them Jake brakes. Air brakes on a truck. Or the low rumbling sounds are 125, 250. There's not a lot of language going on down here. As it turns out, many deaf people have good ability to hear those sounds. And there's a reason why, which I will get to in a minute. So your speech sounds, let's go here. Let's go. Speech banana. Yes. See, look at that. That's oh, let's get colorful. Uh-huh. Okay. It's called a speech banana because, and so where are speech sounds heard? Okay, so maybe I was at 250, right? And then you go all the way up to the higher end. So between 250 and 2,000, 4,000 is your speech sounds range. Your voicing, so v, b, the sounds that are made with vocal cord movement will be in the lower range. But some parts of those sounds are higher, like s, f, v, well, yeah, s, very high frequency. And so those, well, what you're seeing here is that many deaf people have a higher frequency loss. Many senior citizens will have a higher frequency loss. And you can detect if the person has it because they start to whistle when they talk because they don't hear that sound because it's above where they can hear still. Okay, so and so I have noticed that in some people, professional radio broadcasters, particularly Paul Harvey, not that you know who that is now, but there's a time in his broadcasts on the radio that he was starting to whistle, and then later he stopped. And either someone told him and trained him how not to do it, or he got hearing aids so he could hear it. And he didn't hear it, he didn't hear it before, and he can hear it, he can stop. Okay, so that's the idea. So you have low sounds and a little bit higher, and then very high frequency. Okay, and how loud does each sound have to be before you can hear it? So you start off with ba 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 ba, and then you get over here, and then your head's vibrating. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, I can feel that, right? You don't really hear it at that point. Your head is vibrating back and forth. I think there's a sound. Okay. Um, so you probably have a hearing loss somewhere in here that at 0 decibels you can't hear. Well, at 0 decibels, why would you be able to hear anything, right? It's not on. Okay, we have to start with. Okay, and so then, yeah, and then you build it up. So, so there you go. That's what we measure when we identify if someone has a hearing loss, and that's what we call it, that their hearing is lost. Where did it go? Okay. And so, one way to fix or approach this is to have a hearing aid, and a hearing aid will boost the sound in whatever range you fix it to. So maybe you need more help in the high end, and you leave the lows alone, or maybe you do everything. The problem is it increases all the sound in the range that it's focused on. And so the result is that many senior citizens, if you ask them, hey, do you want to go out to eat? Say, oh, okay, fine, but okay. And they really don't want to go out to eat if they wanted to talk with you because they can't hear you in the restaurant because all the forks and knives and plates and all the noise and chatter is elevated. The hearing aid just makes it, and they can't hear you. And if you're in a quiet room, then there's none of that noise blocking you, and I can hear you. Okay, so that's the problem with hearing aids. That all the sound goes, and it's, and some people are just can't take it, and put that thing away. Okay. Oh, and the other thing is, a hearing aid does not make it clear; it just makes it loud. Okay, so if you're already hearing it as multiple sound, and you can't understand what it's saying, then it just makes it a louder muffled sound, and you still can't understand what it's saying. But blah, blah, blah. You get the idea? Okay. So hearing aids don't solve the problem. They let you hear some things. Oh, the cochlear implant. Ah, what shall we do? So the idea was, well, if the hair cells are dead in the cochlea, can we bypass them? Can we get around them? Can we stimulate the auditory nerve without having the hair cells in the cochlea? Can we do it? And the answer is yes, but it's very rough. You have many thousand hair cells all over this little tiny piece. And you have maybe 22 electrodes in the cochlear implant. So you go from many thousand, maybe 20,000. I don't know the numbers exactly, but that feels about right, 10 to 20,000 hair cells. Okay, let's Google it. How many hair cells in the cochlea? Look at that. It always knows what I want to ask. Okay, so wow. Okay. So you have 3,500 to 12,000. So 20,000 was a little bit high. 10,000, not a bad guess. Okay. So let's just say, hey, 7,000. 7,000 active hair cells in most young adults. And now we're going to have 22 electrodes. Not a good, it's like, So your ability to hear with precision, not there. Does not happen with the cochlear implant. I've heard that people with music, they hear songs that they know from before, they recognize the song, their memory of the song fills in the gaps, and they can hear that song. New song, never heard before, unless they substitute with parts of known music from before, it's just electronic, strange noises, robot noises. Okay, so what happens? So you take a line with little electrodes on it, and you stick it in the cochlea, and there's one place that you can do that. That has, and you have to get it around, And the hair cells are on the inside. But this thing's going to scrape around the outside. And so they're not even going to be close to where you're trying, well, they're not going to be up against where you're trying to go. There's a lot of problems with it. But you can get a sensation of sound. Now, when do you get that sensation of sound? When your processor sends information to it, and then it does its thing. So you have a microphone, but the microphone is probably going to be close to your ear, where normal people can hear, right? Okay. And then the line goes to some processor. Now, the processor might also be right behind the ear. The processor might be something, some pack that you wear, and it has batteries and it lasts longer than this thing does. Okay, so the processor says, oh, these sounds are happening. That means I fire these electrodes, boom, 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 and it sends that information back to the transmitter. And this has a little magnet right in the middle of it. So you take it off, and you put it there, and you have another magnet inside your head. And that's the fun part with people with cochlear implants. They can keep a paper clip right up here if they want. You have a metal something, right? Extra bobby pins. But problem is, if you need to have a, which one is it? CAT scan, right? The one where it's the pulsing magnet. It will rip this thing through your skin out, and there'll be lots of blood and pain, and yeah, and you don't want that to happen. So the problem is, you get this put inside, you need a medic alert, something that says, no, don't give me that. It's not a positron scan. Don't give me that. Okay. Nope. There we go. So that's section 1. We've talked about the ear and what makes a deaf person. That makes a deaf person deaf. What contributes to a deaf person's life? The eye and the hands, as well as, lungs and blood and heart and all that. So it's worth knowing a little bit about the eye. Also, if a deaf person has problems with their eye, that impacts how they perceive the sign language that you're generating. So, so you can see the various labels here, and I have labels. Otherwise, you can memorize them from the book. I don't think it's worth reviewing them in the videotape. The book has them. See? So you need to maybe remember what some of these things are. What do they do? Well, okay, so the main part of the eye is this pretty clear liquid that light can pass through. That's important. If it was dark or opaque, then it means no light goes through. You can't see. Okay, so that's important. You have a lens that focuses, because you have little muscles on either side that pull it or let it compact, and so you can focus the light on the back of the eye. So light comes in, gets focused, goes through the vitreous body, and then hits the retina. The retina is all along the back here, because that's how you get peripheral vision, is that you can see, you're not just seeing a dot, you're seeing lots of dots. You've got a whole array of visual stimuli, and so that's all over inside the eye. For someone whose sight is diminishing, if they have, say, retinitis pigmentosa, then there's damage to the retina, and so I think it becomes colored. It becomes pigmented retinitis pigmentosa. So it becomes colored over, and therefore not able to see other things than the covered over part, which is black. Okay, and so your peripheral vision would diminish because the outer edges would diminish until you finally have a diminishing whole of vision. And you have a protective cover. The cornea is pretty tough. It can be scratched and healed. It's not that you want to test that. You have, I mean, how much light comes in is controlled through the iris. So, like the camera, although today's cameras you don't see that anymore, but you can add a lot of light or very little light. And there are reasons for that, but if you have a very bright situation, letting in a lot of light, everything's white. I can't see anything. So you need to be able to control that so that it has value, true values. And there's other things in the eye. Okay? And so the big thing to remember for the hand, it's got a lot of bones. There are more bones in the hand than there are in the arms and legs, right? If you count the carpals on the wrist, you have 6 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 metacarpals, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 phalanges. So that's a bucket load of bones. And that's kind of all I want you to know about it at this point. But that is possible to injure one's hands. And we will talk about that another time in actually another class where we talk about repetitive motion injury. And deaf people can have repetitive motion injury, and hearing interpreters can have it, and all kinds of people can have injuries to their hands. And so we want to be careful how we do our work. Boom. All right. And so test, fill in the gaps, fill in the gaps. That was Unit 4 preview. See you on the next one.